Knowing I had to be on the right track, I grabbed the manhole cover and easily yanked it off. A damp, smelly darkness yawned at me from below, but unfortunately it seemed like the only way forward. Oh, little rat. I remember the little rat. It's so cute. Look at his little eyes. After clambering down the ladder, I stepped off the bottom rung into murky, shallow water. A few rats darted away, squeaking in terror like I'd barged into their private meeting. I really hadn't come to LA expecting to splash around in the sewers, but life was just full of surprises. I cautiously made my way forward, trying to spot any sign of the agent. The stench of sewage was almost unbearable. It was bad enough as a human, but as a vampire, it felt like I was snorting a line of garbage. Ironically, just a few hours ago, I'd been lounging in my extravagant hotel suite. And now, here I was, getting intimately acquainted with LA's waste. In the middle of all that filth and vermin, I pondered how a shit hike was good practice, yeah, for all the shit you're about to get into. Let's have a look at our stats. So, everyone still hates us. Why am I reserved? At least I'm diplomatic. I feel like outspoken is a good one to be if you're a Mavar. Diplomatic is probably more, like, I would say Golgotha are probably like in the middle. Like Mavar, Golgotha, Ascari. I don't know who would be reserved. I think these are the important ones for the clan, maybe. Why are you calling it a clan? It's a house. If I wanted to get anywhere in my unlife, I'd have to get used to the filth beneath the surface. This was probably just the beginning of my descent, and the worst was yet to come. The further I ventured into the sewers, the more uneasy I felt. My sharpened instincts jumped to every noise, every strange flicker of light, and yet nothing came out of the darkness. But it felt like something was watching me. Maybe it was just the numerous rats. They seemed to be following me from a distance, probably wondering why I was invading their domain. Still, I had the distinct sense that another presence was nearby, although I couldn't pinpoint where. Then, over the awful smell of LA's various waste, I suddenly picked up a different scent. Blood. But it was strangely acrid. That's the right way to say that word, isn't it? I'm not gonna go listen to that voice again, but a warped version of the sweet smell I was used to. I followed the bitter scent down several tunnels, staying on high alert. Closer. It was so close now, and anticipation filled my empty gut. I have to say that, you know, I enjoy the, like, kind of sexy, glamorous, whatever, like the vampires that you generally see in, like, media. Apart from Twilight, I wish I could respect glittery vampires, but I can't. It just is not right. It's fine. It's like a new spin on something old. Maybe there are glittery vampires somewhere else in the past. I don't actually know. But it's not what I, associate with vampires. But this game shows you, like, the more depressing side. Like, even the fact that other vampires' blood is disgusting to them, which kind of fair in a way. Like, if we're a different species in a way from humans, once you're a vampire, I guess because you prey on humans, you would, like, us humans, we think our blood tastes disgusting, right? Like each other's. So I guess that makes sense. So in the way that, like, vampires, they also find each other's blood disgusting. But it's also kind of sad in a way. Like, it makes the whole, like, vampire thing feel even lonelier. Like, oh, even, like, your blood's disgusting to each other. Like, it's actually, like, has a horrible smell and taste, I don't know. There's something about actually showing the reality of vampires, like how they would probably be, is just very intriguing to me. So I've never actually been quite as intrigued by vampires as this has made me. I always liked the idea of vampires, and probably probably a very controversial opinion here, but one of my favorite vampire movies is Queen of the Damned, which is really good. I don't know. I just really liked it. But that, I would say that's a very glamorous portrayal in a way. So, but this is just like realistic, and I know a lot of people wouldn't be very happy with that, because anyway, you say realistic and then you say vampires and you're like zoning out already, but you know what I mean. If they were real, I don't think it would be glamorous, basically. I don't think it would be the actual being in the life. I don't think it would actually be that good. Closer. It was so close now, and anticipation filled my empty gut. Yeah, sorry for the tangent. I do that sometimes. I rounded yet another corner, and then the smell stopped. It was strongest right here, but I couldn't see anything but water and floating garbage. Had I missed something? Just as I was about to turn around, my gaze fell on a ruined TV lying on a pile of clothes. It looked unnatural, out of place, and the water around it was a different colour. But as I stared at the TV set, I slowly realised I wasn't looking at someone's discarded trash. The screen was torn out, but instead of exposed wires inside, I saw a mangled head. That pile wasn't just clothes, it was a body. With a chill creeping up my spine, I slowly slept closer, studying the corpse. When I recognized its features, my stomach clenched in dread. This was Charisse's agent. At least, from what I could tell, her body was completely mutilated. Someone had opened a hole in the bottom of a TV and stuck it over her head. Let's just examine it more closely. She looked like she'd been attacked by a wild animal, huge chunks of flesh sliced off, bones sticking out, clothing torn into shreds. And, more strangely, she was missing her eyes and ears. But judging from the precise cuts there, they'd been removed with almost surgical precision. As my eyes travelled down the massacred body, I spotted something on the ground by its side. It was a small piece of oddly bright stationery, printed with almost mechanically perfect handwriting. It's always the same. It must have been a note from the killer. Charisse would definitely want to see this. I bent down to gingerly grab the paper, folding it up to stick it in my pocket. At that moment, I felt something on my shoulder. Cold grasp, squeezing tightly. I know who this is. Who's there? No reply. Whatever was behind me didn't move, didn't breathe. But just as I realized, I recognized its presence. You may want to watch your back a little more carefully in the future, sister. A low drawl echoed in my ear. I only said that because, when I first played through this, I did the ... But I only said that because I knew it was Marcus. So I guess I should stop, going into this, as if I already know what's happening. I do, but I should probably not. A low drawl echoed in my ear, and the hand on my shoulder slowly turned me around. There stood Marcus, his pale eyes shining brightly. Phew, I'm glad it's just you, Marcus. Just me, you say? I find your phrasing to be quite unflattering. He pursed his lips together faintly, apparently insulted by my relief. At least you're not a murderer. Turning away from me slightly, Marcus lowered his gaze to the gory mass of flesh that was once Charisse's agent. I saw a keen interest in his eyes, almost fascination, not the look you'd usually observe a mangled corpse with. I gather the Red Queen sent you here. She will applaud your investigative skills, no doubt. Tell me, just what do you believe happened to this unfortunate soul? I don't know, that's a kind of crazy one. I feel like this is kind of the truth, I guess. Let's just say that one. What was it? See no evil, hear no evil. You're correct, her eyes and ears are gone. Perhaps the culprit felt that being observed or listened to was a fearsome thing. Hands clasped behind his back, Marcus strolled towards the corpse, circling around it with an analytical light in his eyes. The bottom of his long coat swished in the discoloured water, soaked and dripping, but he didn't seem to particularly mind. I suggest you tread very carefully around this matter, Valkii. There is a sense of formless malice in the air, a festering loathing that something created. Do not underestimate the wretched. Why are you here anyway, to investigate? In a certain sense of the word, yes. I'm not here on orders, merely scientific curiosity. As Markus's calm drawl echoed off the walls, putting me slightly more at ease, my body seemed to suddenly remember the stench around me, making it difficult not to gag. It was the acrid smell of the agent's blood churning in my gut, even overpowering the scent of rotten flesh. See, this is what I was saying though, like we can smell blood as humans. Like we can smell like another human's blood and not be like, oh god, I feel disgusting. I mean, maybe some people would because they just don't like blood. But we wouldn't be like, oh god, like my gut is churning and like this smell is overpowering rotten flesh, you know? So it's like vampires' blood to each other is disgusting. And I feel like that just sets each one apart from each other even more in like a very lonely way. Like it's just like an extra thing, you know? Along with some other stuff which we'll probably get into if the slightly NSFW scenes are to be believed. I don't think they contribute anything to certain ends, so maybe I'll put it in. I don't really want to, honestly I don't really want to read it out loud. We'll see. As if sensing my thoughts, Markus took a deep long sniff of the air, his eyelids fluttering closed. If you're puzzled as to why the smell of her blood is so wretched, beyond the advanced state of decay of course, it's because of a rather curious phenomenon. He wandered back towards me, observing my face intently. To humankind, vampire blood is wonderful, intoxicating, a drug beyond any other. In fact, it gives them certain temporary powers, usually a very weak form of their donor's own. But to other vampires, another Night Stalker's blood is the most repelling taste on earth. A rare few of our kind can drink vampire blood without throwing it back up, but in most cases, we are all but toxic to each other. See, right here, I feel like it's just like, you know, an allegory for like, we're toxic together. Like, vampires together can be really toxic. You know what I mean? I don't know. So even if a vampire drinks another's blood, they won't get any powers. Oh, I was hoping it'd be a special bonding thing. I guess whoever killed me, let's just say that. Bonding? You appear to have a remarkably romanticized ideal of the walking, talking corpses that we are, Valkii. See, I do like it. I do like it. I like it that it's more realistic. Again, realistic and vampires don't really go in the same sentence. Or do they? Or do they? What's on the inside is, I'm sorry to say, often quite grotesque. A slightly sadistic chuckle rumbled from his chest, accompanied by a dim flicker of his eyes. Ah, well, enough of such morbid trivialities. I should be crawling back to my shop, but before I do, I wanted to mention something that you may find important. Can't we just talk about kittens or something for once? By that, are you implying that kittens are not somehow important? Markus eyed me severely. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. I love kittens. I love kittens. Now, despite what you may think, the number of vampires in Los Angeles is fairly low. Most of us all know each other, or at least each other's names. And that's exactly why word about you will spread faster than herpes in a game of spin the bottle. In fact, I have a mind to believe it's already spreading. Everything you do or say will get out somehow, so keep that locked up in your mind somewhere, safe and sound. I guess I should try to keep a low profile then. You most certainly can, but I would suggest a different solution. Consider associating more with your fellow stalkers of the night, indeed as often as you can. Not just the vampires who share your beliefs either. A creature is corrupted when they hold in higher esteem those who agree with them rather than those who don't. Make allies, or at least observe your enemies, because someone will always find a fantastic excuse to hate you, even if you make Jesus look like he wasn't trying hard enough. You can find our kind everywhere. The slaughtering house, the abattoir, I mean to say, the streets, the bar, the beach, the hotel. He gestured grandly in a half circle with one hand as if using the surrounding filth to symbolize LA. And you know where my den of depravity is, of course. Now, I'll start looking around for allies. Thanks, Markus. Now, are you thanking me because you appreciate me, or because you like me as one of those allies? Politics always add such a dreadful veneer over everything, don't they? Such is the nature of man. He exhaled a long, quiet sigh, smiling wistfully for some reason or another, but probably not from sympathy. But just as he turned to leave, Marcus paused, throwing a sudden glance back towards me. Ah, that's right. Why don't I pick you up tomorrow at the hotel? Maybe we'll have another sojourn at my shop. I've thought of a further step for your unorthodox tutelage, assuming you're not too scarred from your first visit, of course. Well, I had a great time. Marvellous, I do love an enthusiastic worker. Keep up your splendid performance and you may end up a candidate for Employee of the Month. I'll let you imagine the prize. He raised 2 fingers to offer me a casual wave, eyes glinting behind his glasses. As Marcus disappeared around the corner, his presence rapidly faded, almost as if the darkness had just swallowed him up. For all I knew, maybe it had. With the killer's note in my hand and the image of Charisse's dead agent burned into my brain, I made my own exit. Back on the street, the driver had been patiently waiting for me. Of course, he said nothing as I climbed into the sedan, even though I probably smelled like all of LA's bodily waste. Surely even he wonders sometimes if he was being paid enough for all this. He's just always silent. Wonder if Charisse like cut out his tongue or something. She doesn't really seem like the type, but I don't know. Maybe she does actually, I don't know. The glimmering hotel lobby welcomed my return with warm lamplight. But the second I stepped inside, the desk clerk hastily motioned me over, offering me the telephone and a scribbled phone number. Apparently, Charisse was traveling and couldn't receive my report in person, so I had to ring up her hotel. Ring, ring, ring. Yes, Charisse Locke speaking. Her voice crackled sharply at me, brisk as ever. Who is this? Your favourite little mistake. Ah, yes, I suppose using your name would have been too much effort. You're right, it was too much effort. I had to make it longer. She sighed very audibly, almost like she was blowing directly into the receiver. I assume you found the agent then. Give me the details of your report. Just tell her everything, whatever. I described everything that I could remember, mentioning the agent's body and the way I discovered her. There was the note too, which I read out to Charisse. I see. After I finished, the line went silent for several long moments. It doesn't seem like an act of intimidation, but it's most peculiar to leave a body in the sewers regardless. Her halting words sounded a little wary, concern rippling through her voice. To be perfectly honest, this strikes me as the work of an independent rogue or a serial killer rather than an assassin. Rather unnerving, to say the least. The price? No, I'm not going to be mean. We should be careful. I agree, it may be an isolated incident, but I would rather not lose any further associates to some unhinged killer. Charisse pointedly cleared her throat, and just like that, glided onto the next subject. Your timing, as always, is perfect. I recently received a message about a few problematic mortals. These past 2 nights, it would appear they've been searching for vampires, most likely as part of some supernatural tabloid publication. She let out a quiet, weary exhale that suggested this kind of thing wasn't new. Normally, they wouldn't be anything but a mild nuisance, except these mortals are dangerously close to the Mavar hideout on the beach. Randall and his followers, animalistic and reckless as they are, might accidentally expose their true natures while the photographers are around. Therefore, to put things bluntly, I need you to drive these humans away. You are up to the task, I assume. Fine, I'll take care of them for you. Good, be discreet. Feel free to employ whatever means necessary, just ensure that Randall's street urchins don't show their faces on the nightly news. Very well, unless there's further business, I'll leave you to your devices. That's all. Good night, Charisse. Good night, Valkii. Let's just be kind of pleasant. It's pleasant sometimes. With that, the line clicked off and my second mission for Charisse came to an end. It seemed like this was going to be my new routine, at least until the war was over, so for better or worse, I'd have to settle into it. At the desk clerk's insistence, I changed into a bathrobe and let the staff wash my disgusting clothes. By the time I returned to my room, still swathed in fluffy pink cotton, the sun's rays were beginning to loom dangerously on the horizon. Marcus had promised to meet me tomorrow, so I definitely need a good night's rest. There was no telling what kind of interesting surprises he had in store. Click. There's always a little click when you turn the light off. Crawling under the covers, I curled up in comforting darkness. Soon sleep took me away, blocking out the painful sun. The end of another night in Hollywood. Are we going to have another dream about... Is his name Luis? What's his name? It's something like that. It's something like that. It's bothering me that I don't remember his name. The Golgotha leader. I glanced at the lobby's clock. Already 12:30. It felt like I'd been sitting here for ages. There was still no sign of Marcus anywhere. Maybe he'd forgotten about his promise to pick me up? I'd waited for a phone call, then looked outside for him, and finally returned to the lobby's plush chairs to wait. Maybe I was better off doing something else. Let's wait, it's fine. I grabbed one of the lobby's magazines and flipped through it for a while. As I combed through the strange, sordid lives of Hollywood's up-and-coming stars, another half hour passed. No sign of Marcus. Well, if there was nothing else to do, it made sense to finish Sharice's next mission. The beach wasn't too far, so I'd be back before the night was over, unless something unexpectedly bad happened, which didn't seem too far-fetched. Wow, I can't believe you were an asshole, making me wait like that. Sharice's car was parked idly outside the hotel, probably on standby. It was cheaper than a taxi and probably more reliable, so I slipped inside, hoping the driver was free. A predictable silence greeted me after I sat down. Take me to the beach, please, sir. The beach, you say? Marcus! No, I think I have a different destination in mind tonight. The unexpected sound of a voice made me jump. When I jerked my head up to glance in the rearview mirror, a pair of glowing blue eyes gazed back at me. I was wondering when you'd turn up. The same goes for you, my friend. I thought perhaps you'd wandered into the toilet and gotten sucked in. Don't dilly-dally so long next time. I was waiting for you. Excuses, excuses. What a prick. He gave me a dangerously wide grin, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel. Now, are you ready to slay the spirit of gravity, Valkii? Just sit back and relax. Let Sharon ferry you along. That's the death person, isn't it? The person who the river Styx, right? Ferries you to your death. I don't have a good feeling about this, now that I said that. The next moment, Marcus reached for the ignition, and before I knew what was happening, we took off like lightning, barreling down the street. More than a few cars honked at us, and I couldn't blame them. Marcus weaved between lanes and shot through a red light, never taking his foot off the gas pedal. Now, wee! Ha 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 ha. Marcus rolled the windows down, turning the car into a wind tunnel, filling my ears with a deafening roar and buffeting my face. Each turn threw me around, slamming my shoulder into the door repeatedly. Right. Left. Right. I couldn't even tell what direction we were going anymore, except maybe to hell. Then, when I finally managed to glance at the road ahead, I saw we were rapidly approaching an old lady in the crosswalk, but instead of braking, Marcus only pressed the gas harder. 3 points. Haha. The Reaper won't be swinging by until later. As Marcus yelled out the window to her, he swerved sharply, missing the woman by inches. See, I knew he wouldn't run her over. That's why I said it. He's not the type. The wheel screamed in protest and my head hit the window hard, stunning me for several seconds. Why don't you have your seatbelt on, lady? I could hear the birds circling my head. Tweet, tweet. Faster, faster. I do enjoy your enthusiasm, but let us take a moment of pause. Lame. Finally, we got onto a stretch of freeway where Marcus slowed to a slightly less crazy speed. For a short time, he actually kept the car straight, but I looked up to see his feet on the steering wheel, hands clasped casually behind his head. I'm starting to believe I missed my true purpose in life. As a chauffeur. Not to alarm you, but a 14-wheeler is merging in front of us. Now, Valkii, nobody likes a backseat driver. That's fair. That's fair. Didn't they ever teach you that in driving school? Goodness, the lack of education these days. At precisely that moment, the truck in front of us blared its horn, causing Marcus's feet to jerk the wheel. We plummeted into another lane, heading straight for an exit curve, which Marcus drifted through at top speed. It was hard to tell over the roaring wind, but I thought I heard sirens. As soon as we were back on the city street, my seatbelt abruptly snapped free, as if on cue. You had your seatbelt on this whole time? The next turn threw me in a sharp left and I tumbled to the floor. But just when I managed to pull myself upright again... Is he trying to hurt me? Like, I don't appreciate this. We lurched to a sudden stop, which almost sent me flying through the windshield. As I gradually recovered my senses, I heard a soft sigh of contentment, then the sound of a door clicking open. Come now, sister, this is no time for a catnap. I felt 2 bony hands grasping my arms, hauling me out of the back seat. When my feet found the pavement, I staggered upright, feeling like a pair of socks tossed around in a dryer. A glance around me revealed that we landed on a dark, empty street somewhere that looked vaguely familiar. Why, Valkii, you look ever so slightly frazzled. I didn't scramble your organs too much back there, did I? Oh, I do apologize. The wicked glimmer in his eyes made it difficult to take his apology very, very seriously. That was amazing. We should do it again. Perhaps, but perhaps not. Most days I prefer new adventures to reliving the old. It's fair, fair. He shrugged, casually straightening his shirt collar. Now, I know the ride may have been a little bumpy, but it was a necessary measure to keep the Red Queen and her knights from following us around, or anyone else who might be watching you, for that matter. For the truth we are hunting is a shy beast, and we don't want to scare it away. I'm trying to think of whether I'll do Randall's route. It doesn't seem fair that I do Heath and Marcus and then I don't do Randall. I'll think about it. Sliding his hands into his pockets, Marcus began to wander down the street, casually leaving the abused sedan behind. I fell into step beside him, still slightly dazed from our eventful trip. For whatever reason, Marcus had driven us to a seemingly random spot, but I recognized some of the street signs, which meant we hadn't really gone far from Hollywood. Still, it felt so grim and remote that we could have been light years away from all that glamour and shine. I had the strange sense that we travelled to the bottom of the underworld, and now we were beginning to crawl back out of it. I imagine you're wondering just why I decided to take you out here. Marcus offered me a solemn murmur, pausing to glance at the skimpily clad woman who emerged from an alley stumbling past us. On most nights, I go for little sojourns around the city, taking in both the vampire and mortal masses. Sometimes I speak to them, other times I merely watch and listen. Both are equally essential, I have found. One can learn a great many things from Hollywood, provided one rips off the surface to understand the roots. The way it affects our society? Yes, to some extent, and also how our society created it in the first place. But everything we see as a cause is, in reality, merely an effect. The effect of countless imperceptible pebbles, all of them stacked into a mountain. That's why I dislike boiling any situation down to mere dominoes. He lightly kicked a rock on the sidewalk, letting it bounce forward a few feet, then kicking it again when we caught up to it. However, the first thing we truly need to do is... oh my. Trailing off suddenly, Marcus blinked a few times, adjusting his sunglasses. When I followed his gaze forward, I saw someone emerging from around the corner just ahead of us. A white-haired, slender figure hurrying down the street, his eyes darting around a little anxiously. Is that Heath? Of course it is. How could you ever mistake that nervous skittering? It's his telltale demeanor. Marcus glanced at me, sounding puzzled at my surprise. Then cupping his hands to his mouth, he called out loudly to Heath. Where is the current flowing tonight, I do wonder? Why is he in this room? Stop it! You're torturing me. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. I want to help you, but I can't. Heath came to a sudden halt, swiveling abruptly to face us. His eyes were wide and defensive, like an animal ready to turn and bolt. Ah, I thought I sensed somebody. Heath's tense expression quickly warmed into a smile, his eyes drifting from Marcus to linger on me. I wasn't expecting to see you two here, especially not together. What a coincidence. I could say the same for you, Mr. Polaroid. Marcus's tone was a little cool, though not directly hostile. What are you doing out here, lost and alone, so far from the herd? Just business, like always. Heath idly fiddled with his cross pendant, rubbing it between his thumb and forefinger. Despite his smile, he seemed uncomfortable, maybe due to Marcus's unblinking stare. I assume I know what's going on with him right now, just because I've been through his route. But maybe it's good we ran into each other. I've been meaning to talk to you, Valkii. How are you doing? I haven't seen you in a few days, and I wanted to make sure you were getting on all right. Oh, Heath, you're so nice. But it's so complicated. It's so complicated. I spent last night in a sewer, and tonight I almost died. Life's peak. No, I'm not going to say that one. I'm doing pretty well, actually. Oh, I'm so glad to hear it. I've been worrying about you so much. His eyes flicked towards Marcus, though only for a split second. Are you sure you're alright? If you need to tell me anything, you know you can. Valkii has just begun to discover her new life. Marcus interjected calmly, shifting a little closer to my side. His stance was oddly protective, looming over both Heath and me in different ways. Of course, such a thing is never easy, but you'd be committing a great injustice if you doubted her capabilities. I don't doubt her capabilities, Marcus. Then you must doubt mine instead. Marcus's accusation made Heath fall silent. The atmosphere grew oppressively tense. but it seemed to disturb Heath more than Marcus, who only watched me expectantly. I'm fine, Heath, really, but thanks for asking. Alright. I won't push it anymore then. I can't be mean to him, like it hurts. Heath smiled gently at me, though his eyes seemed unusually tense, as if he was trying to tune out Marcus's stare. I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. I just didn't want you to think you were alone. Alone in what you're experiencing, I mean. We've all gone through it once. Even Marcus. When Marcus's flat expression didn't shift an inch, Heath let out a soft sigh. Well, I should be getting back to the hotel, I think. But if you two are going ahead on foot, you might want to be careful. When I was coming this way earlier, I passed a horrible fight. There were vampires, but I don't know which houses they were from. His voice fell to a solemn, uneasy murmur, eyes shifting away from us hesitantly. Somewhere not far off, I heard the low rumbling of thunder filling the gap of silence. It's a little too late to turn back now, I'm afraid. Speaking up again, Marcus offered us a casual shrug. We're merely out for a short evening stroll, a celebration of our new journey together. But if something were to happen, well... I felt his hand lightly pat my head, more playful than patronizing, probably. If anyone turns aggressive, Valkii will protect us by making them so uncomfortable they just decide to leave. Isn't that right, Valkii? Nod slowly with a knowing smile, I guess. Heath shot Marcus a long look, his brow knitted in concern. Please don't take it so lightly. I don't want to wake up to a report that you're both... Slowly trailing off, Heath lowered his head a little. I thought I glimpsed Marcus rolling his eyes for a split second, although I couldn't be sure. Ah, before I forget, you came here from the hotel, didn't you? Was Cherise's car still there when you left? She called me earlier and said it was gone. I wonder if there was some sort of sabotage attempt. How strange. We'll let you know if we see it. Yes, of course. Marcus chimed in, nodding enthusiastically. By some great miracle, maybe the vehicle will frolic past our paths, wild and untamed. I will have my lasso ready. As he spoke, I heard a car approaching us from down the street. Heath quickly glanced up, raising a hand to wave at it. Ah, there's a taxi. I'll take it back to the hotel, I think, but enjoy your night, you two. He seemed a little eager to leave, although he gave me a last long look as he turned away. Good night. Good night, Valkii. Okay, never make him appear before me again, please. Stepping down from the curb, Heath climbed gracefully into the parked seat. It's just sad because, like, Randall has so much respect for Marcus, but he hates Heath. I know, like, obviously Heath is, like, the complete opposite of Randall, basically. And I don't exactly know what's going on with Marcus in regards to how he views Heath. Like, I haven't puzzled that out yet entirely, but it's just, it's so sad. Like, he's alone in how he feels, and I hate being reminded of that, how everyone, like, treats him kind of badly. I don't know. It's like, oh, you're too soft to be a vampire, you know? Like, as if there's only one true way to be a vampire, even though they don't even really believe that themselves, but they certainly seem to believe that being soft is not a good way to be a vampire. Oh, just, this fucking game. Stepping down from the curb, Heath climbed gracefully into the parked taxi. It took off as soon as he closed the door, zooming down the empty street. Marcus watched the car intently as it drove away, his glowing gaze seemingly following it even after it turned out of sight. Just then, another low rumble of thunder echoed around us, and the next moment, something wet landed on my head. Droplets began to slowly fall by our feet, increasing one by one as they darkened the sidewalk. What remarkable timing! Marcus tilted his head, peering up at the sky. Something up there certainly has a sense of humor, wouldn't you agree? I'm not complaining, I love the rain. I do. My, what excellent taste, so do I. However, my hair gets frizzy something terrible out in the rain, and I'm not of a mind to spend 3 hours combing it out tonight. As the rain began to pour down in earnest, Marcus sauntered over to the nearby bus stop, ducking under its tiny roof. Without hesitation, he lowered himself onto the filthy, decrepit bench and languidly stretched out. Sit down beside him, why not? There was a little space that Marcus wasn't taking up, although like a cat, he apparently felt entitled to most of it. Shocking. I sat down in the empty spot, feeling the touch of icy metal seeping through my clothes. More thunder gently growled in the distance. We watched as the streets became steadily drenched, puddles splashing up whenever the occasional car rolled by. Some of the rain had fallen on Marcus before he'd gotten to shelter, though he didn't bother to wipe the droplets running down his face. A few wet strands of hair clung to his pallid cheeks, making them look like jet-black veins or cracks on porcelain. Just think. If we hadn't encountered that little lost boy, we'd have already arrived at the place I wish to take you. Despite his remark, Marcus sounded more amused than annoyed, drumming his fingers lightly on his thigh. And now here we are, waiting for a bus that will never arrive. Thank you, Heath. You don't like Heath very much, do you? I wouldn't describe my feelings in such simple terms. His expression sobered a little, and he thoughtfully stroked a finger along one eyebrow. True, I do loathe his nature because he reminds me of what I myself once struggled with so acutely. I imagine that's why I can't help but feel a certain sympathy for him. Sympathy, mind you, not pity. I despise pity. Okay, so... But Marcus, you don't treat him very well. You say you have sympathy for him, but you treat him not nicely. Like, you don't seem to show your sympathy. I guess that would maybe be out of character? I don't know. I don't know. I know what he's struggling with. I wish I didn't mention Heath. God. And what is he struggling with exactly? I don't like the other answers. Why, himself, of course. One of the hardest battles to emerge from as the victor. Marcus paused, then his nose wrinkling slightly. However, most abhorrently, he smoked cigarettes. Marcus, my dude! My dude! Give me a high five! I don't like smokers for personal reasons. Be as flimsy a person as you like, but for heaven's sake, don't make the world stink more than it already does. I couldn't agree more, like, actually. It's not the smell I mind, but rather that the smell lingers. It soaks into one's hair, skin, and clothes, and I abhor any scent that lingers too long, even the sweetest smells in the world. That's fair enough. Oh my god, he took off his glasses. Pulling off his slightly wet glasses, Marcus began wiping them with the hem of his shirt. I'm letting this video go on for just a little bit longer. The glow of his eyes cast a faint pale blue sheen over his cheeks, cold and ghostly. He looks better without the sunglasses, I have to admit. Well, we're stuck here. Allow me to touch on a certain subject lingering in my mind. He turned his head, glancing at me where I sat beside him. As close as we are, his unblinking stare felt much more alien and intense. As you may have gathered for yourself, I am not over fond of clarifying my intentions. However, there is one thing I feel the need to address. During your first and oh so fateful night, you will recall I instructed you not to trust a single soul. But circumstances have changed, and now that we find ourselves in a partnership, I have to wonder if you've forgotten my advice. Have you begun to trust me? I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't necessarily trust him, but also I don't not trust him in a way. It's very complicated. So I think I have, yes. I see. Thank you for your honesty. Pausing for a moment, he tapped his foot lightly against the pavement, lips pursed in thought. Let me approach this a little differently. Why do you think I have agreed to mentor, or shall we say, accompany you? You have a reason you're keeping secret. Oh, something dark and dramatic, perhaps? That idea seemed to tickle Marcus, who immediately broke into a cruel grin. Like guilt or personal redemption? I don't think that. I just think your eccentric visions have shown you something. Or maybe you think I feel responsible for you somehow. None of those. Why, that would be just downright uncreative of me. He clicked his tongue disapprovingly, as if I'd offended his taste. I didn't. You were the one who brought them up. I didn't say it. Indeed, my true reasons are... Marcus paused, peering across the street with a raised brow. Great. A small group was hurrying past us, one of them holding a limp woman in his arms. From their scents, I could tell they were vampires, and from the blood on their clothes, they'd probably just come from a fight. God, that looks like the dude I promised a little something to. I recognize... I told you. I recognized one of them, the same man from the parking garage. When he glanced towards Marcus and me, he froze in place for a moment. No. Then, to my surprise, he stuck his hand up and waved. Oh, okay. Why not? Wave back. Raising a hand, I offered him a wave back. He kept watching us as he walked, or at least seemed to be watching us. When I looked at him more closely, though, I realized his gaze was fixed on Marcus. You know him, Marcus? I imagine so. I do have some admirers, one might say. Marcus, however, seemed more interested in the rest of the group. His eyes followed them down the street until finally they disappeared into a back alley. Okay, I will give it a little pause here. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.